This week on the PTR, we were able to test the 4 dungeons from the War Within that were coming into this season. And when they announced this season, I had a lot of thoughts. I had a lot of things that I thought, I thought about the actual season. But this week certainly changed a lot of that. So I wanted to make this video because, yeah, I'm very eager to hear other people's thoughts on it, and also very eager to hear, if you tested it and what your thoughts are on it too. But basically, the 4 dungeons that are returning are ones that were voted on. And I think a lot of people voted on them because they were good trinket dungeons or something like that. Like, I don't think they voted on them necessarily because they enjoyed doing them in Mythic Plus difficulty content. But I personally do like these. 3 out of the 4, especially. Eric Kerr is like, okay, I could give or take. But it's kind of fun, the last boss. But yeah, the other 3 out of the 4 I do enjoy doing for this reason. So I was happy with that because also getting the Floodgate trinket is nice. So they made some substantial changes to these dungeons, and I want to talk about my experience with that now. And again, you guys are welcome to give your experience too if you know anything about it. But basically, Floodgate is the one that was the target of the biggest change. If you guys aren't aware, there is a mini boss in there called Bubbles, and it is looked upon as a very, very dangerous mob, which I do not necessarily agree with. I don't think it's anywhere near as dangerous as people make it sound, but it's definitely one of the hardest trash mobs that's ever existed. It's up there with like the Shadow of Zool from King's Rest, and they got rid of it basically. So it was really weird because the patch note that announced the changes was saying they moved it, which is really funny because they did technically move it. They changed its availability in the dungeon, so it can't be attacked at all, but it's still in the dungeon. It now spawns when you pull the third boss, like you summon the third boss, or the third boss, and he kills the fish. He grabs it and slams it. You should definitely watch it. It's kind of funny. But it's a really weird decision because it seems like they actually spent a lot of time on that. Like it wasn't just some arbitrary thing. They actually changed it a lot, and they added a Bubbles Junior in the pipe where he used to be, and he's staring at you when you walk by. So I have no idea what they're going for there. Honestly, it honestly kind of feels like a waste of time. But yeah, that's like some intense fan service, something that we haven't seen Blizzard do really in a very long time. I don't know when they would have done something like that before, because it's just pure fan service. Like, they actually waste their own time and money making that because there's no benefit. They could have just fucking removed the mob, right? But so the dungeon's quite different now. It does require a different count. I didn't get to do it a second time this week because what we're going to talk about now. But the PTR is an absolute shit show right now, to be honest. The players on there, I'm not really sure why people even play anymore on the PTR. But yeah, it was not good. I think we only finished like 3 keys on a 4.5-hour live stream, which is like worse than you would see on live. But one of the big things about why it was a shit show, quote unquote, was because of the difficulty. I feel like it is way harder than last week's PTR testing. We did the other dungeon of last week's PTR testing, and it was so easy. Like, we were double upgrading it very easily. Nothing in there felt challenging. I honestly don't know why that's like that, but I assumed it was just because maybe we were over gearing it or something. The scaling has not changed. Everything's still at 710, which is supposed to be the heroic item level maximum, the hero track item level. We had a funny key where we had somebody who wasn't getting scaled because they had season 1 gear on, which is apparently intentional. But regardless, outside of that, I don't think that was happening. And this week's 4 dungeons were just remarkably harder. The Floodgate that I did on the end of Thursday stream was pretty easy, but every other thing we did was really, really hard. And let's talk a little bit about Priory now. So Priory, another one that's returning. And I think one of the big kind of factors here is that Priory and Floodgate are the hardest dungeons in Season 2, among the hardest. Maybe you could argue that, but they're definitely not the easiest dungeons. Whereas the 2 dungeons from Season 1, Dawnbreaker and Arikara, they were the easiest 2 dungeons in Season 1, right? Those were the actual 2 easiest dungeons. So they have some weird kind of balance that they need to strike here, and I'm not sure how they're going to handle it. But as of right now, it does seem like Dawnbreaker and Arikara have gotten much harder than I expect them to be. And, Priory and Floodgate have not changed in maybe that way. So I'm not really sure if that's true. That's just like a fleeting opinion on that. So I don't know exactly if anything did change. But let's talk specifically about Priory and why I feel things have gotten actually harder for a different reason. They basically shuffled a bunch of stuff around in the dungeon to the point where I think they're trying to change the way you approach it. One of the things I did really like about the dungeon was how it flowed. It felt like the route and the timing of the route was perfect for me in season 2. I freaking loved it. Like, I loved it. It's actually my favorite dungeon to tank in season 2, and I think it's probably one of my top like 10 of all time to ever tank, just because of the flow. So the flow was particularly important because of the way the mini bosses work in the dungeon, and it seems like they are now trying to heavily encourage you to stop fighting the mini boss on the left and instead fight the mini boss on the right. Now, if you are from the future, you may be laughing at that, because I think that may still not be true, but it does look like they were thinking of it. And I think what they were trying to do was make them a little bit more equal in terms of difficulty. But the way they did that was just put a massive shield on the one on the left. There's no change otherwise. It's the same mob. It just has way more health, effectively, like double, I think, really. So it's ridiculous. It's so, like, it just lives longer than everything else by like twice as much. And it's a long time fight. Like, you're just standing there forever. But then I tried going right, and it's just not great. Like, I just don't like it. I think it's going to be a lot harder to get to the perfect count that we had on our previous route. The flow of the route is not as bad as I initially thought it was going to be, but it's not fun. And then the biggest issue is that mini boss on the right is actually really, really, really hard. It puts an incredible dot on you, it makes you move constantly, and perhaps the worst part about it is it can't be chain pulled into any other trash. Like, I don't know how you would combine other trash into that, because there's no trash near it, and it's on this like elevated platform that I guess maybe as a Death Knight I can grip mobs up onto, but I think in general it's not going to be favorable. Now, theoretically, it should make the rest of the combat easier, and I honestly don't think it does, because they changed the boss. The first boss it's not very different, but it is notably different in a way that will be very different. Instead of the frontal being a spear, it is now a leap, and it will put a area denial very large, probably like a 30-yard radius, maybe larger, area denial on the ground. Apparently what we learned is it puts 5 down, and then the 6th one replaces the 5th one, the first one, or whatever you would say, so it lasts however long that is. But it's just so large. It's really disruptive, first of all. It's very jarring, too, if you've done the fight a ton like we have in Season 2. And most importantly, which a lot of people probably aren't going to realize until it's too late, the boss can reset on you if you take him too far away from where he starts. It's really hard to tell you exactly where that is, too, and this is the problem. Blizzard does not define that. It's not a door or even a wall, like any type of illusory wall or anything like that that you can still walk through. There's simply nothing there. And we had it reset on us one time. We were fighting trash with it, and I noticed that. And that's the only reason I know about that, because I don't think anybody has ever learned that that boss would reset in a way that would actually be conducive to succeeding in the dungeon. Like, you would have to be fucking around there to find that reset, you know? But so we have had that in Season 2, and now I'd imagine in Season 3, given the fact that there's tons of area denial, it's gigantic, it's like cutting the room in half. Yeah, or you're going to have that happen. People are going to have that boss reset. So Blizzard 100% needs to do something about that, and I don't know that they will, because I don't know how they would. It's like, there's no walls to even put a door on or something, you know? I don't know how you would do it. So it's bad. I think they need to just make it not reset maybe, but there probably is a reason that it does reset in the first place, and I don't know what that would be. Anyway, outside of Dawnbreaker, the changes to the mini boss and the boss itself, there's nothing really changed. So those two dungeons actually are stable in my eyes. But then we do Dawnbreaker and Arikara, and we were getting absolutely owned in there. It was a disaster. And Dawnbreaker wasn't too bad. The only change that I could tell is that somehow count has changed. I think one of the patrols in the area near the second boss, the second boss, you would say is different mob type, I think. I'm not really sure, to be honest. It's been a while since I've done the dungeon, and that's partially to blame. Like, that's also there in my head about why I'm having trouble in these dungeons. But I don't remember it being as hard as it was to survive at times. It felt harder than it was back then, and that's surprising given the fact that, you know, on the PTR everything is scaled and we had no problems with the other dungeons. But yeah, the count changed, so I need a new route. The only other notable change I discerned was that the big shadow elemental guys do the dark flows. You know, in Season 1 they did that. They don't do that anymore, meaning they don't do tons and tons of AoE damage if you don't kill them quick enough, meaning that you can now chain pull on top of them a lot better. An unsung hero here also is that the Season 1 dungeons have the modified reticle circle swirl things. In Season 2 they made the visuals like way, way, way clearer, and it actually does help Season 1's dungeons a lot here. It's not like huge, but it's notable, and it's also notable on the mini boss that does that ball that projects out from it, and also on the boss, I guess, does that. It's now very, very clear the like kind of the width of the ball, so you're not standing in it when it shoots out. So that stuff helps, but I bring that up because the shadow elementals also do swirls. It seems like they always just put the swirls on one player, and now you see exactly where the definition of those swirls are. You can move out of them a lot easier. But yeah, we need basically one more pack in that area is the way my route works out. I don't know what it's going to change for other people, but something has changed one way or the other, I think. So could be I made a mistake somehow, but unfortunately, I'd never get to finish keys on the PTR, so I don't actually know. We only had really one shot at it. Now, Arikara is the big one, and Arikara is very interesting because it was looked at as the easiest key. It was looked at as the easiest timer, and the only really hard part was the last boss of Arikara. So let's define why the dungeon was easy, okay? I think, in my opinion, the timer was lenient, very lenient, honestly, probably too lenient. But we've had dungeons that have been lenient in the past. Many dungeons, honestly, have been very lenient in the past, and they still were not as easy as Arikara was. I think the second reason Arikara was the easiest was because a lot of people really mastered it. They were trying to farm the trinket from it, and they spent a lot of time in it, and they knew it inside and out. This will not be the case in Season 3. Presumably, people will still want the trinket, but it will not be being looked at in that way, I would imagine. And on top of that, they've changed the dungeon a fair amount. So one of the big changes they made is those big guys. There's fireworks, congrats. Anyway, those big guys, the big kind of Anubarak looking dudes, they now do an incredibly dangerous AoE. It's nature damage, and they do it pretty frequently, maybe 3 times throughout their life cycle on each pull, and that is a totally different mob type now. Also, to note, they did the same thing with the mob at the very end of the dungeon. There used to be this hallway. You could walk kind of down the middle or up the sides to get to the final boss. That mob in the middle has changed as well. It's no longer, it's like a totally different mob type now. It's the same mob type as the other area that does the AoE now, so not the slam anymore. But yeah, so those mobs are very, very, very dangerous. And when I say we got our ass kicked in it, I mean the healer died a lot and couldn't keep people alive because of that amount of danger. So we wiped there many times. That mob was without question the hardest mob type in the entire testing of this dungeon pool. And I don't know if it's going to get nerfed or not. They just changed it, so probably. I would imagine it would get nerfed. But it's a big red flag for anybody who's playing a healer or DPS. You need to be aware of that, and you need to be ready for each one of those. And now it really puts the onus on you kicking the casters that are fighting that mob as well, fighting with that mob as well. Because if that big AoE is going out and it's very dangerous, any cast that gets off will kill you. You know what I mean? It will finish you off. So I think right now it is the hardest dungeon by a lot. And I don't know, if that's going to change. Because the third reason that the dungeon was easy was because the other 2 reasons would contribute to the ease of the dungeon so much so that you could fail the final boss and still be okay. I've seen that multiple times in low keys especially. You can wipe 2 or 3 times on the last boss and still upgrade that key. I don't think that's going to happen this time around because of the changes they made and the way the difficulty is proliferating. But they didn't really nerf the last boss. So they did change some things on the last boss that should make it easier. One of them is that there's less poison that goes out, okay? The second one is that you can actually survive getting pulled in and all that, not getting rooted and staying out. We have seen people survive it, okay? So theoretically, those things should be easier, right? But the fight is so mechanically complicated for people who are not ready for it that I think it's just it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they change numerically or, how easy they make some of these mechanics. If they are there, period, they will confuse people. And they'll confuse people to the point that there will be wipes and there will be failure to the boss. So I can't imagine the timer is going to be as lenient as it was. I don't know, if they changed that at all compared to Season 1. But I will also say that I seem to need more count. I did the same routes in Dawnbreaker and Arikara as I did in Season 1, and the count's not there. It's not right. Dawnbreaker, I just needed one extra enemy for my route. But Arikara, we had no hope. I had no idea what we needed. We needed an entirely different route, it seemed. Because I went down the left side. I pulled all this stuff like I used to. We didn't have count. They also removed There used to be 2 guys right by the final boss. If you went down the left side, a lot of people would be worried they might get aggroed. So I added them to the route, okay? Those mobs aren't there anymore. They're now patrolling with the guy that I was just talking about in that middle hallway. So that's a pretty dangerous pull all of a sudden, but it's also a very high volume count pull. But yeah, they patrol with him now, so they're no longer in range of being aggroed by the boss by accident. But yeah, that pull is all now actually really dangerous. Anyway, I went to the left side, jumped down to the middle, fought that pack, still needed a whole other pack. So we were missing like, I don't know, like 5 or 6% count from what we had in season 1. I'm not sure why. So yeah, it makes me think they're just adding the amount of dungeon mobs you need to kill. So anyway, the big story is the big guy, the big Anubarak looking guy, and a lot of people were talking about skipping them. Okay, so let's talk about that reality, because I think that's also what's going to make the dungeon. That's like the 4th thing that made the dungeon easy in season 1. You can do super conservative strategies in that dungeon and totally be fine. Is that still going to be true in season 3? I don't think so, frankly, based on what we've seen. Again, these could change, they could get nerfed, but based on what we've seen, I would say no. So doing, like, fighting all 4 of them, there's 4 of them, right? If you go the way I go, you go right after the first boss, there's one in that long hallway. We used to combine all of that into one pull. Maybe that's not possible anymore. That one to me seems unskippable. Then if you go to the right, there's one that is just kind of standing there with some casters. That's the way I've always gone. But maybe now we need to start going to the left. Well, we used to go to the left, and there was a lot of other casters on that combat, like that side over there, that was really, really hard to kind of keep kicked and corral them together and not have a calamitous event happen because of it. So maybe the left is easier because the guys are easier to skip or something. People were saying you can skip them over there. But I don't know, like one way or the other, there's one right in front of the 3rd boss, or the 2nd boss. I mean, I'm bad at this, but the 2nd boss has one right in front of it. People used to like Warlock Gate past it, you know what I mean? So are people going to try to do that still? Basically, TLDR, the dungeon's going to get a lot more complicated. Like way, 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 way more complicated. Frankly, all because of one enemy type changed. And then, yeah, whatever tuning is happening there, I don't know. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the dungeons. I think they have a big problem with Dawnbreaker. I think they went way backwards with Priory, and Floodgate was just like, I guess it's funny that they did it. I mean, it seemed like it was a waste of time, but hey, I don't want to be like a spoil sport about it, but it just seems like kind of like they just wasted their time doing that. Anyway, the actual big thing that we have seen though is that last week I made a video on the like vote to kick, that whole like the lever situation and the voting there. You actually have last week I talked about being able to not vote in combat. Okay, that seems to have changed to this week, or at least something. I don't know. Maybe it was bugged last week, or I was just wrong about it. But one way or the other, I said that in a video, so I just want to clarify now that no longer seems to be the case. If you were in combat with trash enemies, you can initiate a vote to kick. But if you're in combat with a boss enemy, it's appearing that you still can't. We were trying to discern when you can do it, because you still cannot do it like instantly. You cannot start the dungeon and immediately do a vote to disband. It's not possible. It's grayed out, and if you try to do the chat command, which is /abandon, it says you can't do that yet. So it doesn't tell you when you can do it, but it does tell you you can't do it. Now, we're suggesting it was 5 minutes. There's some footage from the stream that indicates it was more than that, but that was with deaths. Obviously, deaths take time off the timer, so it's hard to be sure exactly how long. And I wasn't just sitting there trying to spam it, so I don't know exactly the second it comes up. Obviously, people will figure this out. Blizzard's not going to be able to hide that from us. But yeah, it's a question that we have that we don't have an answer to right now, at least personally. And then the other one is the whole when you do it. And if you can't do it while you're in combat, I was suggesting that me as the tank and the group leader, I was going to have a lot of power there. Okay. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but Grawl actually brought up a great point on his podcast that it should be this way. I think he mostly feels that way for bosses, Maybe not the way I described it, but I think he partially agrees that it should be that way for bosses, because if you're doing it in the middle of a boss, it might pop this thing up in the middle of your screen that disrupts you or diverts your attention, and that could cause even more mistakes. So it's good that it doesn't happen during bosses, but my original point on that kind of stands, where I was saying, like, well, when do most people want to quit? It's when they're all dead. And guess what? When they're all dead, I'm usually still alive. So I was suggesting that, the whole hostage thing nonsense. Yeah, oh well, it certainly sounds like Blood Death Knight party leaders are going to have a lot of ways to do that. I'm not going to do that. Some people seem to get confused by that. I'm not going to waste my own time with that. If everybody else wants to quit, we'll just vote, man. If I lose the vote, it's whatever. I don't really care. But I was just saying that as the party leader with my key, Resilient, it seems like a lot of people don't really understand that, because there was even the people who were arguing with me about that in the last video saying there's no reason to do keys above 12 for anything but score. I just told you, I have a fucking Resilient key, dude. I don't need it for score. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a Resilient key in the game now. That's not true anymore. So if I want to finish my key to change it, that's a valid reason for me to continue doing the dungeon. I'm not trolling people by voting no on a key that I want to finish. That's just not how it works. Okay, so you guys are just wrong about that. And yeah, I think this system is really going to confuse a lot of people and take them by storm. So I don't know how it's going to play out, but it was quite funny. And I think I will make a review on this key that happened while I was testing it on the PTR, because there was a lot of people really worked up about the actual dungeon we were in on the PTR, which is kind of fucking embarrassing, to be honest, but whatever. People have no control over their emotions anymore. We know that. But I just thought it was really funny because the two keys that happened in, the vote gets initiated and it fails because it's just them who's mad, basically. And they stay. They actually stayed. It was like, oh, is it working? Like, I don't know, because we had a lot of people just leave without any vote at all. But I just thought it was really funny that the two people who were the most worked up and the most likely to be potentially, the hostages or whatever the people would say about these situations, they actually stayed in the dungeon after the vote failed. So I don't know, man. This game is so weird. It is so bizarre. It's like I can't even understand the mentality of people who go onto the PTR and get all worked up over something that's happening on there. But I deeply feel bad for you. Like, honestly, if you're one of these people, I genuinely feel bad for you, because there's zero stakes on the PTR. We're on there to help the company and learn ourselves, and you did neither. So why are you on there? Anyway, let me know what you guys' thoughts are, especially if you did any testing. More reviews coming this weekend. Next Tuesday, we're going to be streaming. Hopefully next Wednesday, I'll be back on the PTR testing, provided it should be the rest of the dungeons, which are going to be the Shadowlands dungeons, Tazavesh included. And then Thursday, I'm going on vacation. I'll be gone from Thursday to Monday. So hope to follow back on the next Tuesday back with streaming, but I should have reviews for every one of those days. So I don't think you'll even notice I'm gone, maybe, but hopefully, that's the future. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.